If you want to make more money in your business, then you'll want to listen to today's episode on the Ask a Business Expert podcast. That's because today we're interviewing Paul C. Morin. Now, he is an experienced accountant and business advisor who's got more than 25 years helping his clients to make their businesses more successful. And today he's going to answer a really important question. Let me take a look. It's called, why should a business owner understand gross margin? The answer he's going to give you is going to absolutely be significant in terms of moving your business forward in the most profitable way possible. And Paul is an expert who's able to help with that direct issue. So I'm not going to steal any of his thunder. Here's the terrific interview with Paul Morin. Paul, welcome to the Ask a Business Expert podcast. It's so good to have you here. For the people that don't know, Paul has been my accountant since I started in business. He's given me tremendous advice over the years. And so I felt so lucky when I had the chance to reach out to you, Paul, to get an article from you about just one of the, thousands that you've written to support small business owners. And we're going to talk about that in just a second, but really good to have you here on the show. And what I wanted to do, that's sort of a small introduction, but if you had to meet somebody at a cocktail party and explain who you are and what you do, what would you tell them?
Oh, I would tell them I'm a crazy small business accountant that's located off 122nd Street. I specialize in small business and really enjoy it. I have a lot of fun and enjoy transforming lives. That's what I like to say.
That's the values that I certainly put forward in my own business, and I'm sure that's why we've gotten along over these years in terms of the impact that you have. And I can't let people know enough about the high integrity that Paul brings to his work and how he's certainly kept me in check over the years to make sure that everything is as clean as possible. And then just the efforts that he goes on to in the community to share information, help people along, go that extra distance. So I hope, at the end, we're going to get your contact information for sure and people will be able to reach out to you. But in the meantime, you wrote a terrific article about the importance of gross margin for people on the blog. And it was really good to get that. The download is there as well. So people, if they need a checklist, we'll leave a link for people to make sure they can get the checklist as well. Why, Paul, is gross margin, the concept, so important for small business owners from your perspective?
Well, from my point of view, and for the business owner's point of view as well, is it's a measurable financial number that is that will dictate your profitability. And it's just basically your gross margin is defined as what is your revenue less your cost to generate that revenue, showing what your gross margin is before we start to pay all your fixed expenses.
Well, that's obviously really important for people to break it out, because I know people get excited and maybe they might land in your office at year end and they might find out just at year end that they actually don't know what that is. Is that fair?
That's fair. And it's a very good point. That is the first thing that is measured on a financial statement when I'm discussing at the year end with a business owner, what was their margin this year versus the previous year. But what I'm saying is, wouldn't it be better? Well, I feel it's great if you measure that number each and every month.
Super. And it makes sense because then they're tracking their business on a monthly basis, and then they can course correct as opposed to at the end of the year or maybe at the end of 3 years. I'm sure you've seen some of those cases walk into your office as well. But what is gross? So we know what gross margin is. We know why you think it's important. Let's give an example. You don't need to name names in a sense, but give it a sort of a business example that we can follow along with and see why the gross margin concept understanding would be so important.
Yeah, but if I could just back up just a bit,
Yeah.
Talking about this as measuring this as a financial number on a monthly basis is when your costs versus your revenue, and you have a gross margin number that gets out of control. That is a number. I don't know how to best explain it, but it can get out of control by various ways, and it's good to know that your gross margins you've lost your margins early on in your fiscal year, rather than finding out that 3 years later or at the end of the year.
Well, I know you were talking about a retail store example in the article. Like
For sure.
this concept of, okay, so I've got to order stock to get it into my store. I know, and basically maybe walk me through that in terms of how that example will relate to what you just said.
Sure. Retail store is perfect. Um, let's talk about shoes. You're a shoe retailer, and you purchase your inventory for the upcoming year, and these shoes are they're at a certain cost. You've paid a certain amount of freight. You've paid a certain exchange, and now that forms the cost of your product that you're going to be selling. Now, there's various. We could have $100 pair of shoes with a cost of $50. That means that we have a margin of $50. It's simply revenue less the costs. Now, what happens if that, and we're expecting a margin of 50% each and every month. But what happens if at the end of the year that's not 50%? What if it's 30? What would cause that? Well, what comes to mind is theft. What comes to mind is damaged inventory. Some of your product got damaged. Maybe you didn't pay the exchange rate that you expected to pay. And maybe the suppliers, the cost of your products had changed. There's various reasons, but it's to find out at the end of the year, it's too late to make a 50% margin. You need to find out at the end of the month, I have lost some margin. What is going on? I need to step in and figure out what is the problem because I'm expecting a 50% margin.
This is so important because they know if they make that margin, they can pay their staff, they can pay themselves, they can do those things that are obviously very important to the business. And you've said some things there that really prompt a great conversation. So I love the exchange concept, for example. I don't know that a lot of small business owners necessarily keep that as a big factor, but tracking that on a monthly basis then to be able to make adjustments, maybe change providers, that would be one way you could do it. Why did cost of goods go up? What was that factor? Again, we're seeing this, obviously these days, seeing it in supply chain issues and those types of things. Should you be shooting for a 50% margin or should it be 60? In terms of how you're going to do things, will your customers tolerate it? I love the intelligence that you are bringing to the conversation, and you can hear that just saying gross margin, educating somebody about it, and then it leads to this. That must be a very rich conversation for you.
Oh, absolutely, for sure. I agree.
Yeah, that's great. And so by being able to, again, get them into the discipline of doing that, if they had to do it on a monthly basis, what's sort of a good way for somebody to record this information or interact with this information? Is it literally getting in direct contact with your accountant on a more regular basis? Is that the right idea? Is it trying to track it yourselves, or do you find your clients find that overwhelming, or what do you suggest?
It's all over, but really, in a retail store, it's very, very important, and it's very simple to do. So you have your opening inventory and your closing inventory. So it involves doing an inventory at cost and making your calculations, your gross margin calculations based on your revenue that you've collected for that month. So it involves doing that count, making sure the inventory is actually there, making sure that your pricing is correct, and doing this on a month-to-month basis, on a monthly basis, is so powerful.
And you've been in the room with somebody, and they've probably taken your advice. What sort of feedback do you get when you're able to, again, extend this good business advisory to somebody? What feedback are you getting?
They just don't know what happened. Like, what happened to our margins? We were expecting that, you said it yourself. Maybe it's supposed to be 60. Maybe it should be 65. We do industry comparisons just to make sure that you're on par. But what if it drops? Like, what is the problem? What is going on? And to get to the root of it, it's can be a real surprise sometimes. Like, hey, I did not realize that the exchange rate went from 1.29 to 1.49 on my Visa for this month.
I mean, talk about just the price of gas alone, or I'm sure in this case, shipping or whatever these things are. I'm so glad
Shipping.
you've written the article in terms of, again, people being able to see this interview, go and get the article, get the steps, get the download, and get this into their business intelligence to really kind of drive overall profitability. And you know that when they get it right, there's going to be some really good results.
Yes, especially with a gross margin, because then that'll lead to your break even. So that's a whole new conversation. But you have to have an accurate margin percentage to begin with break even analysis, and that's a whole new story.
And you can hear then with your experience how you've been able to sort of bring people along for way more than sort of, the sort of financial services, but actually giving them the business intelligence that they need to be successful. Paul, so good to have you here. Thanks again for the article. If people need to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Just 780-482-7297. I'm always available.
That sounds great. Well, thanks so much for being on the show.
You're welcome. Thanks, Gordon.
It's easy to see why understanding the concept of gross margin is so important for your overall profitability in your business. And I hope you're able to go to askabusinessexpert.com, check out the blog section, and find the article titled, Why Should a Business Owner Understand Gross Margin? Or get the free download. Paul's written that up, and it's a great one that you can actually take away, tape that up there on your computer and really dig into this concept and make sure you get everything out of it possible. And you're also going to know, in fact, where to get in touch with Paul as well. We'll leave those details here in the show notes. And if you need help overall, like we've talked about this concept of gross margin today and where you can find a great accountant and business advisor. If you need overall help in terms of leadership development, strategic planning, development in your communication area, and actually having overall impact in your company as a whole, then get in touch. This is what we are passionate about here at askabusinessexpert.com. You can't do it with one person. You can't do it alone. We've got a team approach to wrangling in the right people at the right time to make sure that you get all your questions answered and you can take the action that you need to move your business forward. Get in touch today, askabusinessexpert.com/contact, and we look forward to hearing from you.